Hi everyone. Hi Mambo Sandy. Hi everyone. Hi Zetualeve. Hope you're doing well, darling. Hi everybody. Welcome to the live today. So this year, 2024, I'm really trying to make sure I go live every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hey, darling. Hi, Sandra. Hi, darling. So today's topic is unattended spiritual abilities and mental illness. I put up a post the other day. Hello, Marie. I put up a post the other day about this, that unattended spiritual abilities can and does cause mental illness and mental breakdowns. I had a number of people that wanted me to elaborate, so definitely going to do that. We also took a poll on the group, Sanse Filipino y la 21 División, about what the next live topic should be about. And the next topic was to be about mental wellness. So it really just fit perfectly in line. Hi, Louis. And I just want to give everybody a few minutes to get in here, say hello to everybody. Hi, Sierra. Hi, Carlos. Allow everybody to kind of hop on and be here with us. I'm really happy. It's a great new year, 2024. Lots of new and great things. We have the Three Kings ceremony comes up on Saturday. We're doing that on Saturday at 3 p.m., both in person and virtual. So that's one of the big things coming on. Hi, Glenn. Hi, Mambo J. Happy Monday, darling. And so I'm excited for that because it's one of our big ceremonies of the year. We're going to get into the reading of the year at Three Kings, get the information from the Misterios, from the Loa. So that's really awesome. The other thing is we're going to have, hi G, hi darling. We're going to have a few different kits available. We have my special triple power kit, which is for cleansing, opening the roads, and blessings. That's in the process of being made right now. And that includes something for yourself as well as something for your home. And then we're going to have a prosperity and money kit that's also going to include something for yourself and something to draw money and prosperity into your home. So if you're interested in that, you can go ahead and DM me, write me an email, help at Mystical Work. We'll get you the information about that. So that's going to be really exciting. Hi, Andre. So, hi, Marge. So today what I wanted to go into is that unattended spiritual abilities can and does cause mental illnesses at times and mental breakdowns. And I wanted to go into this actually because it was a conversation that I started to have with someone just the other day. So when someone has spiritual abilities, what this really means is that they have extra sensitivity. With ESP, right? It's extra sensory perception. They're extra sensitive and super perceptive. They pick up on a lot of things that most people, it just surpasses their head. And they are able to have visions. They see things. They may hear the spiritual realms or hear the spirits. They may feel things, feel the energies or feel spiritual presences around them. And when a person has these abilities, right, and that is not something that they were taught about or helped with, it can actually drive people crazy. I've helped a lot of people who thought that they were going crazy when in fact it was just an unattended spiritual ability. And what happens is, for the person, they're seeing things, they're hearing things, they're feeling things, they're experiencing things. And when they try to explain this to a person without spiritual abilities, that person has no frame of reference. They don't understand. And so that's going to very often start to make people feel like maybe I'm going crazy. A lot of people who have spiritual abilities have at least at one time thought, like, am I crazy? Am I going crazy? Is something wrong with me? Why is it that I'm the only person perceiving or understanding these things? Okay. And because they're not in a community that supports it or understands it, they can't get the help that they need when they're having these experiences. And it's very common. I've seen this very, very often, that when someone has unattended spiritual abilities, very often they become really afraid of their abilities. People become really fearful and they become afraid. And so they do everything possible in order to run away from the ability or try to block themselves from having those spiritual experiences and block the ability from working. In fact, it's not uncommon that as a result of unattended spiritual abilities, these individuals will suffer from really heavy drug addiction, really, really heavily. And they will become addicted to really oftentimes powerful, strong drugs. The reason being that those drugs often help to block the ability. So it blocks the ability so that they're not having those experiences. Since those experiences, for a person who doesn't understand them and does not have a support, does not have the learning of, the proper education about these abilities, they'll often do everything that they can simply to just shut them down, to get them to block them off. And when you have these spiritual abilities, and yes, when you have these spiritual abilities, hi Bonnie, hi King mentality, yes, Carlos. When people have these spiritual abilities and they don't have anyone that understands them or supports them, or is able to give them the education that they need for these abilities, aside from drug addiction, there's other symptoms that often occur. One is anxiety. Lots of people with spiritual abilities suffer from really heavy anxiety. The reason that they suffer from heavy anxiety is because they have all of these information and visions, hearing things, feeling things. It's all coming at them all at the same time. There's no filtering or control over it. So you become overwhelmed. You have all these things coming at you and you become severely overwhelmed and you don't know why, right? And the reality of it is it's because you're like super open, and in that super openness, all this is coming at you all at the same time. As a result of that anxiety, that can lead people to become very isolated and isolate themselves. People will start to isolate themselves. Why? Because only when they're alone are they not being overloaded by all this energy and all this information that's coming at them from all these different directions. Yeah. So that is true. And that many people do that. So Mambo J says, what about people who do drugs intentionally to block their gifts? They know they have the abilities, but they don't want them. Some people run away. How can they help themselves? So that's true. A lot of people who have these spiritual abilities that have not been attended to will do drugs in order to block their gifts. That's the only way that they can see that they can control the abilities. That's their method of running away, right? And so the only real way to help such an individual is really to start to help them to, aside from working through the drug addiction, start to help them to work through their fear about their spiritual abilities. And the other thing that happens is that people don't want to be known for being crazy. So when people have these unattended spiritual abilities, it can become really hard for people to open up to other people about what they're seeing, hearing, feeling, and experiencing, simply because other people are super judgmental and will often characterize them as being crazy. And so they will want to stay away from the ability, block it in all means, by any means possible. As a result of the spiritual ability being unattended, and they don't have the education, the training, the capacity to control the ability, as a very common side effect is isolation. Because aside from drugs, by hiding, staying to oneself, staying away from people, basically you're not having this information overload coming at you from all directions. And when you do have that energy and information coming at you from all directions, for many people with unattended abilities, it feels like being attacked. So I've seen very commonly where people think that they're being spiritually attacked, but in reality, it's just an unattended spiritual ability. That unattended spiritual ability feels like being attacked. The reason why is because since you're extra sensitive, hypersensitive, whatever you want to call it, since you're getting all this information, you often know things that you probably shouldn't know. And so what happens is you start to be able to really easily pick up on people's judgments and start to pick up when people are kind of giving you negative vibes, negative energy, or when people don't like you. Now, a secret about most people is most people don't like themselves. So not liking you, one should not take it so personal because most people don't like themselves. That's why when someone does not like me, I don't take it personal at all, because if you don't even like yourself, what's your opinion of me matter? Your opinion holds no weight, no energy, no force. Yes. So someone mentions her daughter thought she was crazy for years. She became so scared of her gifts that she ran to Christianity and prays her gifts away in church regularly. The problem with praying your gifts away in church regularly is that the moment you step away from that church system, everything's going to come flooding back. Everything's going to come rushing back. It's more like a Tylenol than a cure or a resolution. So someone else mentioned if you feel it very strongly, it can become too much to experience the response or to process it. Yeah, it's because too much is it's basically a different form of information overload. So spiritual abilities can cause a different form of information overload where there's just too much coming at you all at once, and it really takes time to settle in private in order to process it. Many people who experience social anxiety have an issue where they're spiritually way too open, not being able to control the energies going on. Any place where you have lots of people, you're going to have lots of energy, lots of psychic energy floating all over the place, very busy. It's almost like a concert. Even if you're in a room with 5 people, energetically, it can be very much like a concert and cause information overload. That can cause overwhelm, and it's just like, this is just too much. I need to get out of here. I can't be around this, so on and so forth. And with that information all coming at you, that feels like an attack, especially if you're not seeking the information. Marge, we can definitely help you open up your abilities. Okay? Someone had asked that question on when I put the post about spiritual abilities and how to open them up. Spiritual abilities, if they don't naturally open up, all right? So some people are born where the gift is just naturally open. Other people have the gift open and then it closes throughout the course of life. Other people experience their spiritual ability opening up often as a result of something bad that happens. It's not uncommon. Something severely bad or traumatic can happen, and a person experiences where their ability suddenly opens up and starts to become overactive. So in all those cases, if your ability does not open up in one of those manners, it's through the process of certain spiritual development processes that will open up your abilities and show you what your abilities are. A question I get all the time is, what are my spiritual abilities? The truth is, no, you need not ask anyone that, including me. You need not ask me, what are your spiritual abilities? Why? Because if you go through the proper development process of your abilities, you will know, because you will see, because you will experience your abilities. So you will know exactly what your abilities are as they continue to open up and blossom. So many a time I've seen, and I know a great deal of people who had the experience where the spiritual ability was what we call blown open. Something happened, usually a negative event, and that kind of breaks the ability open in a bit, almost like a car crash, okay? And as a result of having that experience, people have been known, and I know people, I have treated people, I have helped people who end up being placed in the psychiatric hospital, end up getting placed in a psych ward, getting held in a psych ward. And the people in the psych ward, they have no clue about what's going on, because the medical and scientific community, okay, everybody like thinks science and medical things, they're just like it's the top of truth. The truth is, medicine and science is always late. It's always running late. They're just starting to discover things that spiritualists have been saying since the beginning of time. I just watched like a short documentary where now science is agreeing that there is life after death and that the consciousness continues. This is something spiritual people have known forever. This is something that, like, we know this all the way from the beginning of the ancestors, right? But now that science is saying it, now it's accepted. Now it's okay. This is one of my qualms and issues with science and with medicine, because they're always late. The same thing as just now, they have, like in the Mayo Clinic and various other clinics, they have whole programs now that are based on Reiki, meditation, and other spiritual practices, alternative medicine, and holistic health. Why? These are things that mystics, spiritualists have been saying since the beginning of time. It's just hundreds, thousands of years later that science is catching up with what we've known forever. So these things, right, is part of the problem. Part of the problem is that everyone considers like science and medicine the top of truth, the real. So you're waiting for the masses and for science and medicine to give you proof, right? I say spirituality is actually the science of your consciousness, the science of your being. That's something that science has yet to get to, okay? So people, then what happens? What happens is a lot of people who are born with natural abilities are not always born within a family or a community that understands and knows how to deal with those abilities. Those people get classified as crazy. Those people get thrown in the crazy pool. And as a result of being thrown in that pool, people start to wonder, am I really crazy? Is there really something wrong with me? What's going on with me? Why am I experiencing these things? Hi, Denise, darling. Okay. Why? What's going on? What's wrong with me? When in fact, there's nothing wrong with you. What's wrong is simply that you are not in an environment that understands what you're going through. And if you don't understand the illness, you cannot provide the cure. It's simple as that. The thing about spiritual abilities, it's just a trend that I've noticed in doing this work for 30 some years, is that most of the time, the people who tend to have really natural spiritual abilities just don't want them. They don't want them. And oftentimes when they've begun to experience them, they either experience them early on in life and it could have came through a very scary situation, or may have been blown open through some type of traumatic event. As a result, a great deal of people who have natural spiritual abilities do not want them. So they do everything they can to run away from them because most of them want to be what is quote unquote normal. Normal also happens to be angry about life, upset all the time, depressed, sad, living as a clog in the wheel, existing instead of living. That's also normal. But people cannot clearly see that reality. So what happens? The person with those natural spiritual abilities tries to block them. They try to block them in every which way. The moment, especially when people use drugs to block their ability, the moment they're no longer high enough, the ability starts to come back. And I know other people that they've done drugs and still haven't been able to shut it down. In fact, the drug just exacerbated the ability and it made it worse. So what happens is then they have to start doing more drugs in order to shut that down. Spiritual abilities do come at a cost. People think spiritual abilities are free. They're not. You're going to end up being different. You're going to feel different. You're going to experience things differently. You're going to see things differently. You're going to notice things that most people do not notice, right? So they do come at a cost. However, they also, when you're able to develop those abilities, they can also help transform you. As a result of those abilities being unattended, right? Aside from feeling you're going crazy, anxiety happens, overwhelm happens as a branch of anxiety, social anxiety happens, depression happens, loneliness happens. Why? Because many people isolate in order to control the amount of information that's coming at them all the time. So eventually they become lonely. They feel like something's wrong. They feel like they're going crazy. Okay? They feel like something's wrong. They feel like they're going crazy. So on and so forth. As a result, they continue to isolate themselves more and more and more. Another thing is when you can see, and you can actually see how, I'm going to just call a spade, how self-centered and selfish, manipulative, and parasitic most people are, you stop wanting to be bothered with people. You stop wanting to be connected with people. You start wanting to be alone. Okay? Right? I'm not trying to call anybody out, love. I just want everybody to have the information. Right? Because it's something that does not get addressed spiritually. It's not something that gets addressed in our communities. And especially like here in America, European countries, things of that nature, or countries of that background, it's not something that was, how do I call it? Part of the culture, right? Christianity is the base culture. So it's not part of the culture, so people don't understand it and they're not able to attend it. When you're not able to attend it, you just kind of stick yourself in further and further suffering. As a result of spiritual abilities, very often you're going to start to really see, and when you start to see, you're not just going to see the beautiful side of humanity and human nature. You're also going to see the very dark, ugly side of humanity and human nature. You're going to see the selfishness, the greed, the inner poverty, the self-centeredness. And when that happens, it's not uncommon that you just don't want to be bothered. However, that cuts you off from others, putting you in a position where eventually you start to feel lonely. You're welcome. So these things, actually, we had a famous lady. I can't recall her name right now, in the Dominican Republic. And doctors would send people to her temple. She was a caballo de misterio, bruja. And doctors would send people to her temple when they couldn't treat mental illnesses. And she would treat mental illnesses effectively just with spirituality, just with our spiritual processes. And in many of those cases, what people discovered, good evening, Zelma, what people discovered was that really what was going on with these people was they had unattended spiritual abilities that needed care and attention. When all of this is going on for you, you don't know how to control it. You don't know what's going on. There's not a community of support. There's not the education that you need in order to live. What's going to happen? You're going to feel like you're going crazy. You're going to feel like you're losing it. And if you talk to people who do not have the abilities, they're going to make you think you're going crazy. They're going to act like you are losing it. Especially if you happen to see something about them that is true, but they don't want you to know or see. That's another thing right there that happens. It's happened to me. People have tried to pull it on me. People will try to pull it on you if you're spiritual. When you see something and you know it to be true, and it is true, but they don't want you to know it, or they want to hide that about themselves, they'll try to make you feel like you're crazy. They'll try to make you think that you got it all wrong, that you're crazy, that you're seeing things, that you're experiencing things that are not true. This is a way to cover themselves. This is a way to get you to question the ability. And very often later on, you come to find out that you were right all along. And in fact, they were just trying to throw the wool over your eyes, as they say. Okay? Spiritual abilities, at times, when they're unattended, feel like a curse. Lots of people have come in here saying, like, Papa, I think I'm cursed. And when we go in there and we really look, they're not cursed. They have spiritual abilities. Another thing that happens when you have spiritual abilities that are not being attended is you get all this information, but you don't always know what to do with it. You're like, okay, now I know this, but so what? What am I supposed to do next? Where is this information trying to lead me to? And if you don't have not developed the capacity to have a certain level of control over your abilities, you're kind of just ended up with a bunch of information, and maybe 80, 90% of it you can't do anything about. You don't know what the next step is. You don't know how to bring that forward. You don't know how to turn that into something that's beneficial for you. Okay? Most people don't know right off the bat that what they're experiencing is a spiritual ability that's not being attended to. Again, it's not something that we commonly speak about in our culture, right? It can block anything. It's going to block, someone asked, does it block money coming in for people too? It's going to block money. It's going to block relationships. It can block jobs. Why? Because you're going to find it difficult to deal with people. And I have a saying, right? It's that a lot of money in your life, a lot of it has a lot of connection to you being able to connect with people properly. But if you're kind of closed down somewhat in order to try to protect yourself from the spiritual overload, how people experience that is that you're distant from them. People are mainly self-centered and selfish, so they're not thinking, what's going on to that person that they're behaving this way? Instead, they're like, oh, she doesn't like me, he doesn't like me, they're standoffish, they're up to no good, they're being sneaky. When in reality, you're just experiencing an informational overload, and you're trying to kind of keep it all together, keep yourself together. So you close in, you kind of pull in, you kind of hermit yourself a bit in order so that you can do what you got to do. But people won't see that because they're not thinking like from your perception or from your perspective. They're thinking, what are you up to? How are you trying to pull something? Another form of mental illness that happens, you're most welcome, darling. Another form of mental illness, and most people don't know that this is a mental illness. I don't think that it's on like the official mental illness category page because science, again, has not yet to understand and reach this information. It's a very common form of mental illness. And it's very deep rooted, and most people have it. And that is giving a damn about what other people think about you. Bonsoir, bonsoir. It's a form of mental illness. Being overly judgmental is a form of mental illness. When you're too judgmental, you're assuming you know things based on really little bits of information. You're assuming that you know the whole globe basically by looking at one piece of dirt. And as a side effect of an unattended spiritual ability, it can make you become super judgmental. It can make it, why? Because becoming judgmental like that almost serves as a form of protection. It keeps you away from people, so it keeps you safe from having an overwhelming experience. So when people are super judgmental, being overly judgmental is a form of mental illness. And it's a mental illness that many people have. It's actually a mental illness that gets instilled in people from a very young age. Your parents teach you to care what other people think. Your family, society, your community, all these people teach you to care about what other people think about you. So it's not a mental illness because it's something that you were born with. Instead, it's a neurosis or a mental illness that humans believe is common. It's a mental illness that's connected to society. It's a mental illness that belongs to society. And if you don't have it, society is going to work to instill it in you. Only by instilling it in you can you be controlled. People get really afraid of people with spiritual abilities. Part of the reason why is because they have less control over people with spiritual abilities. People fear that which they cannot control. So being overly judgmental is a protection mechanism, but also a mental illness that society has normalized. Hi, Gabrielle, darling, Gabriella. People who click up in order to gossip are definitely mentally ill. Listen, anyone who concerns themselves with what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling, and that concern does not come out of a space of helping or growth, is a mental illness. Why are you minding my business? Because whatever's going on in my head and my heart, that's my business. Unless you're seeking to help me in some form or way, why are you concerned? People who click up in order to gossip about others, it's a huge form of mental illness. If many of my initiates are here watching. Many of my initiates have been around me long enough to tell you. We rarely, if ever, speak about anyone else unless it's an opportunity to learn something by bringing that up. I don't care what the next person is doing. That's none of my business. I don't care what they think about me. What they think about me is none of my business. I don't care about how they feel about me. That's none of my business. And I'm not going to expend my energy on that either. Okay? So when people where they kind of click up to throw hate, to throw shade, to gossip, all of that is a form of mental illness. When someone is like, I call it stalking. So like when someone is like cyberly stalking someone else. Like, I have a cyber stalker. Apparently, he's cyber stalked me for 14 years, trying to speak ill of me. That's a form of mental illness, y'all. How can you be obsessed with someone you've never met, you don't know, you've never interacted with? Unless you have some type of disorder. Okay? Not all forms of mental illness mean that there's anything physically wrong with the person's brain. Not all forms of mental illness are a result of a physical malfunction. Many forms of mental illness are a result of how that person was programmed and taught to deal with life and to deal with other people. Many forms of mental illness come from society. They instill this mental illness. Yes. So someone says, I grew up around family members like that, always gossiping and spreading rumors. I moved away from them, cut ties so I can live in peace. Individuals like that who are constantly in that grudge and grudge of that negativity are mentally ill. Why would you want to spend your life in that energy? In the energy of hatred? In the energy of being upset, being angry? You're wasting your life. And people become addicted to that. People become addicted to being gossipy, spreading rumors, being hateful. All of that, it's another form of addiction, right? I tell people all the time, like, when people ask me, hey, Pops, what's wrong? I usually respond with, like, well, what's right? People connect with other people way too often on negativity. Hi, Leilani. People use negativity and shared suffering as a form of interpersonal connection. I don't want those types of connections. I want connections based on joy, love, success, prosperity, peace, health, wellness, right? But many people do not know how to connect with others via the positive routes in life. Many people have been taught only to connect with others via negativity. And how are they taught this? Like, in this case, sometimes it's your family. It's the way that your family always operated. It's the way that your family always came together. They'd only come together to speak ill, to speak nastiness. And so that's what you get taught. So that mental illness gets passed down. Most people, and the spirit told me this, about 95% of people are actually mentally ill. What's happened, however, is that many of these mental illnesses, society has normalized. Being judgmental has become normalized. Most posts that I see online or comments on people's posts are often very judgmental. And I'm like, wow, you really you went from here all the way to Timbuktu, like, on something so minor, so small. You made such a huge judgment call based on something so tiny. Okay? It is a hard reason why it's truly hard to connect, because most people have not learned how to connect on positivity. So they only know how to connect on negativity, right? I'll give you an example. So at one time, I went on a trip with my godson and my godbrother, and we went to Providence. Rhode Island. Just to have a good weekend, a brother's weekend, man's weekend, right? And we go to a bar. And I sit next to someone. And they talk to me for a little bit. And after a few minutes, they start asking me all these questions based on their assumptions about me. All of those assumptions made about me were simply based on the jewelry I was wearing. 90% of those assumptions made about me were totally incorrect. But I understand they have the illness of being super judgmental, of relating A to Timbuktu when it has A and B is not even connected. So I just played along with it, actually, because I don't want to sit here and explain all of that to somebody who really, it's neither here nor there for me. But that just goes to show you, I see it all the time on social media, right? And anyone who knows me knows, Hispanic hasta la meta. And I love me a good drama, a good novela, it's always fun. But I see it all the time on social media where people put a post that could be really positive for them. Their intention is really positive. And then people just start to go cut them down and start to make all these judgment calls. Oh, he's like this, or she's like that, or he's like that, or she's like this. All these assumptions about these people based on the smallest things. Sometimes it could be something they're wearing. It could be how they walk. It could be how they talk. It could be how they said a certain word. It's ridiculous, right? To automatically connect things that aren't connected, right? Unfortunately, it does happen all the time. And a lot of people are very much energy vampires. In our spiritual work, the word that's been given to us is parasitic. Most people walking around in life, unfortunately, are very parasitic. And they don't even realize how parasitic they are, because being parasitic is what's most common, aka normal. What most people define as normal means most common. What's most common in the world is being pretty much energy vampires, is being parasitic. And it happens all the time. So, coming back to the original topic, if you're experiencing, issues, you might want to check in. Are you experiencing issues due to an unattended spiritual ability? If you're experiencing anxiety, depression, overwhelm, the feeling of constantly being attacked, overloaded, the feeling where you constantly want to isolate, one area you may want to look at is, are these symptoms or a result of a spiritual ability that you have that you're not attending because you don't know how to? And you're going to find that it's going to be pretty amazing for most people that it happens way more often than people realize or that even people think. Yep. Someone says here, moving from a fearful survival mode. Judging our environment is helpful to our survival, but people apply it wrong because they feel threatened. Yes, absolutely. That's 100%. And the fact is that we don't have as many threats as we did all the way back in the beginning of humanity. Most of these threats that people perceive are what I call social threats, which aren't real threats. and actually do not threaten any sense of their livelihood, who they are, or whether or not they'll be able to make it in life. It's because we don't have those real survival threats that the fear has gotten turned towards social survival threats. And now people fear that which really does not affect their survival. Have a huge fear and therefore becoming really judgmental. When you're really judgmental, it really just means you're filled with fear. You need to have those judgments in order to give you a sense of security and a sense of control. He who has total security and total security within the spirit and within oneself does not need to go anywhere and judge. In fact, you can totally be in La La Land and you know you're going to be fine. Yes. So, shared here is, it reminds me of a time before someone had mental issues of fear and it moved to each of the group members. Example of a parasitic spirit. Yeah, so that's the other thing, is that it spreads like wildfire. The negativity does not take a lot of energy in order to spread like wildfire. And people want to believe negative things about others. It's unfortunate but true. When we hear something bad about someone, we're more likely to believe it than when we hear something good about someone. Hi, darling. We're more likely to believe it than when we hear something positive about someone. And even when it's been proven that the negativity was not true, a great deal of people are still likely to believe that the negativity is true. But, people just don't know. It's unfortunate, but true. Love you too. Love you too. Go have fun, darling. So that's what I wanted to cover in on this live today. Like I said, greetings, darling. Like I said, I'll be coming here live Mondays, 6 p.m. EST. I'll try to make like an event post so that every once in a while I won't be able to come here on Mondays because I'll be doing spiritual work, initiations, and ceremonies. I'm really excited. This week we're going to be doing initiations. Oh yeah, I will definitely save the post, love. I will save the post. I will post this on my timeline and all of that. We have initiations coming up this week. I'm really happy and excited to see a lot of the spiritual family. Our first time all coming back together here in 2024. We have Three Kings Day coming on Saturday at 3 p.m. And lastly, we have some kits to cleanse and clear yourself and your home for the new year, as well as for luck and prosperity that we're going to have available. They're going to get blessed at Three Kings. So we're going to have those available at Three Kings. And for those of you who are not able to make it live and in person, we'll be able to ship them out. You can drop Soleil or on help@mysticalwork.com or myself a DM or an email to get the information about that so that we can get you on the list, make sure we have something set aside to send for you. And I'm really excited about that because it's one of the things in one of the kits is what we call triple power soap. It's one of my most popular things. I've actually been making that, I think it's been 20 years. So since 2003, it's one of the most popular things that people love getting from me. And so I'm making a big batch so we can get those out to people. So many blessings. I hope to see all of you guys again next week. If you're not already in the group, Sanse Espiritismo y la 21 División, hit me up, let me know. DM me, message me, look for the group, apply, I'll get you in, because that's where I like to take polls to see what we want to discuss on lives. And also, if you're not aware, we have the podcast over on Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app, Apple Podcasts. And we're currently going through a New Year's series, which I'm really excited about because I'm giving you guys tools on how to create more success and what you want in this New Year's. Last week's episode was one of the processes that we're going to be talking and going through in order to get you to bloom and blossom the success you want to make in this year. So until next week, many blessings. If I see you at the ceremony, it'd be wonderful. If not, stay blessed. Until next time, keep the faith.